The Galactic peace station floated in silence above the blue rings of Arenth Prime. It was the meeting place of 10 great empires. The hall was shining with silver light, filled with banners of alien worlds, and guards in armor stood like statues. Among the crowd stood a single human, Ethan Cole, an engineer from Earth who had come to repair the station's power core. He was not a diplomat, not a soldier, just a man who liked fixing things, but fate had other plans for him. The Verne Empire had arrived that morning, led by Princess Illyra, daughter of the High Emperor himself. She was tall and graceful, her skin a faint silver tone, her eyes glowing like liquid amethyst. Every species in the room looked at her with awe and fear. Ethan was only there because one of the station's conduits had failed. He tried to stay quiet, but when the power flickered during the Emperor's speech, he jumped into action, crawling under the control table with his tools. Sparks flew, smoke rose, and the audience gasped. "Don't worry," Ethan called out, his voice echoing through the grand chamber. "Just a little short circuit. Nothing dangerous." He came out covered in dust, holding a burned cable. The Emperor frowned, but Princess Illyra laughed softly, a strange melodic sound. She tilted her head and said, "Human, you are brave to interrupt a royal address." Ethan grinned, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Brave or just stupid," he joked. "Depends who you ask." The hall went silent. No one joked in front of the Verne royal family. The guards stiffened, hands on their weapons. But Illyra smiled again, curious. "You speak freely," she said. "That is unusual here," Ethan shrugged. "On Earth we call it humor," she blinked. "Trying to understand humor," she repeated. "You find danger amusing." "Sometimes," Ethan said. "It helps when everything around you is terrifying." The room relaxed a little. The translator drones buzzed, trying to process their words, then, trying to lighten the heavy air. Ethan looked at her and said with a grin, "You'd be a perfect mate, Your Highness. You actually laughed at my joke." Laughter, that small human mistake, changed the course of history that day. Every alien in the room froze. The Emperor's eyes widened. The guards raised their spears. Even the translator drones paused, flashing red lights in confusion. Illyra's glowing eyes widened slightly. "Perfect, mate," she whispered, her voice calm but filled with a strange warmth. "Yes," Ethan said casually, still unaware. "That's what we say when we meet someone with a sense of humor." But to the Verne Empire, the phrase perfect mate was not a compliment. It was a sacred vow, a bond of life spoken only during the ritual of choosing. It meant a lifelong union, witnessed by the stars. The Emperor rose from his seat, his deep voice shaking the hall. "Human, you have made a claim before the court of Verne. Do you understand what you have done?" Ethan blinked, confused. "What? No, I was just joking." Princess Illyra stepped forward, her eyes never leaving him. "By the customs of my people, your words cannot be undone," she said softly. "You have offered, and I have accepted." The hall erupted into whispers. Ambassadors gasped. The Emperor's advisors argued loudly. The translator drones tried to clarify the meaning but failed. The situation was chaos. Ethan's heart raced. "Wait, hold on. I didn't mean it like that," he said. "It's just a saying on Earth." Illyra tilted her head again, calm and graceful. "Then Earth must be a place of very bold hearts," she said with a faint smile. The Emperor struck his staff against the floor. "Enough," he roared. "By Verne law, the trial of bonding must be completed. The human will prove his worth or forfeit his claim." Ethan froze. "Trial of bonding," he whispered. "That sounds bad." The guards surrounded him instantly. Towering figures in black armor. Their weapons shimmered with energy. Illyra lifted her hand, stopping them. "No harm," she said. "He is under my protection now," the Emperor glared. "You defy the council." "My daughter, I follow the law," she replied calmly. He spoke the words I accepted. "The stars are witness." Ethan stood speechless as the crowd parted. Whispers followed him. Some laughed quietly. Others stared in disbelief. The human who had joked his way into the royal court now stood as the chosen mate of the alien princess. Later, in a quiet corridor, Illyra walked beside him. Her expression was unreadable. "Do humans always speak without thinking?" she asked. "Pretty much," Ethan said nervously. "It's part of our charm." "You must learn quickly," she said. "The Verne trials are not for the weak. If you fail, your joke will become your last words." Ethan looked at her glowing eyes and sighed. "Guess I'm about to find out what true comedy is." Illyra's lips curved slightly. "Perhaps you are not as foolish as you seem," she whispered. The doors of the royal ship opened before them. Light flooding the hall, Ethan stepped forward, realizing too late that one small joke had just written his destiny, and somewhere in the cold stars above, fate laughed back at him. The royal ship Verne Ascendant shimmered like a silver mountain drifting through the stars. Its corridors were alive with blue lights and humming energy veins. Ethan Cole followed the princess in silence, his heart pounding like a drum. He had no idea what he was walking into. One small joke had turned him into the chosen mate of an alien princess. And now, according to her father's command, he had to face something called the trial of the starborn. Elira walked ahead of him, calm and graceful. Her armor reflected the light like liquid crystal. "You are quiet," she said softly without turning around. "Trying to figure out how I went from fixing cables to facing death trials," Ethan muttered. Elira stopped and looked back. "It was your words," she said. "The stars do not play with oaths, yeah, well, humans joke a lot," Ethan said with a nervous smile. "Our mouths move faster than our brains." For a moment her eyes softened. "Perhaps that is why your species is so unpredictable," she whispered, "and fascinating." They entered a grand chamber filled with floating symbols and glowing energy lines. Alien priests stood in a circle, chanting softly. The Emperor's voice echoed from a high balcony. "By decree of the royal law, the human shall prove his worth. He must survive the 3 trials of bond, mind, heart, and soul." Ethan gulped. "Mind, heart, and soul," he repeated quietly. "No pressure." The first trial began immediately. Elira stepped beside him, her hand glowing faintly. "Do not fight the visions," she said. "They will test your truth." Light engulfed them both, and suddenly Ethan was no longer in the chamber. He stood in a storm of stars, colors swirling like dreams. Voices whispered from every direction, some in English, some in alien tongues. A vision formed. He saw Earth burning under alien skies, human ships rising from the oceans, and then the same silver light of the Verne Empire descending. Elira stood beside him in the vision, her voice echoing softly. "Do you see, human? Our worlds are bound by fate." He saw flashes of ancient war, humans and Verne fighting together side by side long before recorded history. Then the vision turned dark, showing betrayal, destruction, and silence. Ethan fell to his knees, his head spinning. "What is this?" he gasped. "Is this real?" "It is memory," Elira said. "The memory of our ancestors." A bright figure appeared before them, a being made of pure energy, a remnant of some ancient AI that once guided both races. "You are the first human to stand here in 10,000 cycles," it said. "Your kind was once known as the Starborn, the lost children of the void." Ethan's breath caught. "Starborn," he repeated. "You mean—" Before he could finish, the vision shattered. He fell back onto the cold floor of the chamber. Gasping for air, the priests whispered. He survived the first trial. The Emperor's eyes narrowed from above, his voice was deep and cold. "No human has ever survived the trial of the mind." Elira helped Ethan stand. Her hand trembled slightly. "You should not have seen that," she whispered. "The knowledge of the Starborn is forbidden." Ethan looked at her, confused but determined. "Then why show it to me?" "Because the stars chose you," she said quietly. "And I trust their will." Before he could respond, the second trial began. The floor beneath them shifted, turning into transparent crystal. They stood above a sea of molten light, their reflections twisted like living shadows. "This is the trial of the heart," Elira said. "It tests your courage and your compassion," a voice echoed. "One must save, one must fall." Suddenly, holographic images appeared. One of Elira trapped behind a wall of flame, and another of a small Verne child dangling from a ledge. The heat grew unbearable, Ethan's skin burned. He heard the voice again. "Only one life may be saved." Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran toward the child. Diving through the heat, his arms reached out, pulling the child to safety as the illusion collapsed. Elira's image vanished into smoke. When the trial ended, Ethan dropped to his knees. Coughing, his uniform scorched, Elira knelt beside him, her expression unreadable. "You chose the innocent," she said softly, "not the one you care for." Ethan smiled weakly. "If I can't save a child, what kind of mate would I be?" Something in her gaze changed at that moment. The distant royal coldness faded, replaced by quiet respect. The chamber lights dimmed. Signaling the end of the second trial, the priests bowed, murmuring that no outsider had ever passed 2 trials in a row. But the Emperor did not look pleased. His voice thundered again. "The final trial awaits, the trial of the soul if he fails." His essence will fade into the void. Ethan looked at Elira. Any advice? She hesitated. Yes, she whispered. Do not let fear decide for you. Guards escorted them to a dark passage lined with glowing crystals. Ethan glanced around nervously. So what happens if I pass all three? Elira looked at him, her eyes soft like moonlight. Then you will no longer be a joke, she said. You will be my bond forever. Ethan swallowed hard. Part fear, part disbelief, and if I fail, she looked away. Then I lose you, and part of myself. The doors closed behind them with a low hum, sealing their path. The chamber ahead glowed like a star's heart. Ethan took a deep breath, realizing that the joke he made was no longer funny. It was destiny, calling his name across the stars. The royal ship drifted in silent orbit above a dying sun. Inside, the air was heavy with whispers, rumors, and tension. Ethan Cole had survived 2 trials that no human was ever meant to face. To the Vern people, he was either a miracle or a mistake. For the next few cycles, he was kept inside a grand chamber made of glowing crystal. Elira visited him often, bringing strange alien fruits and quiet conversation. She no longer spoke to him like a test subject, but like an equal. You are different from the others, she said one evening, sitting beside him. When you joke, you hide your fear. When you laugh, you fight despair. Ethan smiled faintly. That's kind of how humans survive, he said. If we can laugh, we can keep going. She looked down, tracing her fingers along the silver table. The Vern do not laugh, she said softly. We consider it weakness, but you make it feel powerful. Their eyes met, and for a moment the room felt smaller, quieter, like time had paused. Ethan wanted to speak, but words failed him. He was just a mechanic from Earth, sitting beside a princess who could command empires. Before he could find something to say, the doors opened sharply. Commander Tavar entered, his armor glinting dark red. His cold eyes studied Ethan with disgust. The council demands the human's removal, he said. He is dangerous, unfit, and unclean. Elira stood immediately, her tone calm but firm. He has passed 2 trials. He is under royal protection, Tavar sneered. Protection does not change what he is. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You risk the throne for a creature that doesn't understand our ways. Ethan clenched his fists. You know I can hear you, right? Tavar's gaze was sharp. You have courage, human, but courage without wisdom is suicide. Before the argument could grow, Elira raised her hand. Enough, she said. Leave us. The commander hesitated, bowing stiffly before storming out. The doors sealed with a hiss. Silence returned. But not peace, Ethan sighed. He hates me. Elira turned to him. He hates what he fears, she said. The last human to walk these halls came as a conqueror. Long ago, Ethan looked surprised. Conqueror, she nodded. The old records speak of a war so ancient that even our stars forgot its reason. Some say humans once ruled the void. He laughed softly. I can barely rule my own breakfast. That made her lips curve slightly, the smallest smile. Perhaps that is why the stars brought you instead of a king, she said quietly. Days passed and their bond deepened. They shared stories. Ethan told her about Earth's oceans, about music, rain, and chocolate. Elira told him about her world of crystal forests and living winds. Sometimes she laughed, though she tried to hide it. But peace never lasted long on the royal ship. During a ceremonial feast one night, ambassadors and warriors gathered to watch the human pet eat beside the princess. Tavar stood across the hall watching with cold hatred. When Ethan reached for a cup of glowing drink, Elira's sharp eyes noticed the shimmer of poison on its surface. She slapped the cup from his hand. The liquid hissed as it hit the floor, burning through the metal. Gasps filled the room. The Emperor's guards surrounded them instantly. Who did this? Elira demanded, her voice shaking the walls. No one answered. But Tavar's expression gave away his guilt. Ethan's voice was calm. Guess not everyone enjoys my company. The Emperor entered with thunder in his steps. Enough, he commanded. This mockery ends now. The human will be confined until the final trial. Elira bowed her head but did not argue. She knew her father's patience was fading. Later that night, Ethan sat in a small chamber, looking out at the stars through a transparent wall. A soft hum filled the air as Elira entered quietly. You shouldn't have come, he said. Your father will kill me if he finds out. She walked closer, her eyes glowing in the dim light. I am not afraid, she whispered. The trials mean nothing if the bond means nothing. Ethan turned to her, his voice low. Why are you doing this? You could have denied me, ended this whole mess. Her voice trembled slightly. Because when you spoke those words, even in jest, something inside me changed. The bond began not with ritual, but with truth. He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, his hand hovering near hers. You know, on Earth, when someone says perfect mate, it usually means they see something special in you. Elira looked at him, her voice soft. Then perhaps your joke was a prophecy. A faint blue glow surrounded them, the ship's energy reacting to their emotional resonance. The Vern bond crystal embedded in her wrist pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Before they could speak again, the ship trembled violently. Alarms blared through the corridors. Intruder alert, the mechanical voice echoed. Ethan looked around. What now? Elira's eyes hardened. Someone has activated the assassin drones. Tavar's voice came through the comms, cold and sharp. The human is a threat. I will finish what the Emperor cannot. Elira pulled Ethan behind her, her palm glowing with defensive energy. Stay close, she commanded. You may have survived 2 trials, but now, you must survive war. The door burst open as a swarm of black drones entered, spinning like shadows. Ethan grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, his heart racing. Princess, he shouted. If I die, do I still get half the Empire? She almost smiled even as she fired energy blasts. You will live, she said fiercely. Because I command it. The battle raged across the glowing hall. Fire and light merging into chaos, Ethan fought beside her, and for the first time, the galaxy would see what it meant when a human and a Vern fought as one. The corridors of the royal ship still smoked after the attack. Walls were scorched, energy conduits flickered, and the scent of burnt metal hung heavy in the air. The assassin drones lay shattered across the floor, sparks still dancing around their broken frames. Ethan stood breathing hard, his hands trembling around the alien weapon. Beside him, Elira's silver armor was cracked, a faint glow leaking through the fractures. Her eyes burned with quiet rage. Tavar has gone too far, she said. He broke the Emperor's law. Ethan looked around at the destruction. He nearly broke me too, he said, trying to joke, but his voice shook. Guards rushed in, surrounding them with raised weapons. The Emperor himself appeared moments later, tall and stern, his cloak flowing like liquid shadow. His gaze swept over the chaos, then settled on Ethan. Explain this, he demanded. Ethan opened his mouth, but Elira stepped forward. Father, it was an assassination attempt not by outsiders, but by your own commander. Murmurs rippled through the soldiers. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Tavar, he said. Bring him before me. Minutes later, Tavar was dragged into the chamber by 2 guards. His armor scorched, but his expression unbroken. I did what you were too afraid to do, he growled. The human is a curse. A corruption of our bloodline. The Emperor's voice boomed through the hall. You have defied royal command and attacked the chosen mate of my daughter. Tavar's glare shifted to Elira. She has lost her way. The stars do not choose humans. The Emperor raised his hand, and light burst from his ring, wrapping Tavar in a cage of energy. You will face judgment, he declared, but your words have truth in them. Human and Vern cannot bond without consequence. Ethan's heart sank. He looked at Elira. What does he mean? She hesitated. The final trial, she said quietly. It does not test your strength, it tests the bond itself. And the cost may be your life. The Emperor turned to Ethan, his face like stone. You have proven courage. You have saved my daughter and even my fleet from disaster. But you must make a choice, human. Ethan frowned. Choice, the Emperor's deep voice echoed. Leave this ship now, return to your world and live. Or take the final trial and bind your fate to hers forever. Life or death alike. The room fell silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Elira's eyes widened. Father, no, he... Silence, the Emperor said. The bond is a danger. It could merge our energies. Destroy one or both of you. Ethan's mind raced. He looked at the princess, her glowing eyes, her calm strength, the strange warmth he had begun to feel whenever she was near. If I walk away, he asked softly, what happens to her? Elira looked down. The bond will fade, she said, and I will forget you. That thought hit harder than any weapon. The Emperor stepped closer, his tone lower now. Do not let emotion blind you, human. Love is a weakness that even gods cannot control. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe that's why humans aren't gods, he said. We don't need control. We just need meaning. The Emperor studied him in silence. "You speak like a fool, maybe," Ethan said. "But I'd rather be a fool with something to fight for." Alira took his hand, her touch sending a pulse of blue light through the chamber. "If you take the trial," she whispered, "we will face it together." Guards gasped as the energy from their hands fused, the ancient symbol of union glowing between their palms. The Emperor closed his eyes for a moment, as if remembering something long lost. Before he could respond, alarms blared across the ship. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace. Elira's aide shouted, "Enemy vessels detected. The Korth Dominion has breached the outer ring." The Emperor turned sharply. "Battle stations," he commanded. "Prepare the royal fleet." Ethan looked at the screen, dozens of warships forming a burning wall of light. "You're being invaded," he said. The Emperor ignored him, issuing rapid orders. But Elira turned to Ethan. "They are after me," she said. "The Korth believe destroying the Verne bloodline will make them rulers of this quadrant." Ethan's instincts kicked in. He stepped forward. "I can help," the Emperor snapped. "You will stay here." But Ethan shook his head. "I've seen your battle layout. Your ships form perfect patterns. Too perfect, you're predictable. They'll use it against you." The Emperor paused, surprised that a mere human understood fleet tactics so quickly. Ethan pointed to the hologram. "Shift the rear formation. Lure them into the plasma corridor near the gas moon. The radiation will cripple their sensors." The Emperor stared for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Do it," he ordered. Minutes later, the battle began. The stars outside turned to fire, and explosions painted the darkness red. From the control deck, Ethan and Elira watched as his plan unfolded. The Korth fleet took the bait. Entering the corridor where the Verne counterattacked with blinding precision, cheers erupted through the ship. "They're retreating!" shouted an officer. The Emperor turned to Ethan, his expression unreadable. "You saved us," he said. Again, Ethan smiled. "Guess humans are good for something after all." But victory was short-lived. Another explosion rocked the ship. The enemy's flagship had locked onto their core. Energy levels spiked and Elira was thrown across the deck. Ethan caught her before she fell. "Go," she whispered weakly. "It's not your fight." Ethan held her close. "You're wrong," he said softly. "It became my fight the moment I met you." As medics rushed in, the Emperor's cold voice filled the air again. "The final trial begins at dawn, human. If you still wish to bind yourself to my daughter, it will be before the eyes of the entire Empire." Ethan met his gaze, no fear left in his voice. "I'll be there." Elira's hand tightened weakly in his, and for the first time, the Emperor saw something ancient and dangerous reflected in their joined light. The spark of human love, the power that could change galaxies. The dawn over the Verne homeworld was not made of sunlight but of fire. The battle had ended hours ago. Yet the skies still shimmered with drifting wreckage and burning stars. On the royal ship's highest deck, the final trial was being prepared. Ethan Cole stood before a circle of glowing symbols. His hands were bound by strands of living light, and before him stood the Emperor. Alira beside him, silent, her eyes full of worry and pride. "This is the trial of the soul," the Emperor said, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "If your bond is false, it will consume you both. If it is true, it will merge your essence, two beings, one soul." Ethan took a breath. "No pressure, then," he muttered. The Emperor ignored the remark. "Step forward." "Human?" Ethan walked to the center of the circle, feeling the energy hum through his veins. The symbols beneath his feet shifted like liquid. Wrapping around him in light, Elira moved beside him. Her hand trembling slightly, she whispered, "Once this begins, we cannot stop it." He looked at her, calm now. "I wouldn't stop it even if I could." The Emperor raised his staff, and the trial began. A beam of white energy shot from the floor, surrounding Ethan and Elira in a sphere of light. The temperature dropped and time seemed to slow. Visions flickered all around them. Memories, fears, and truths they could never hide. Ethan saw flashes of his life on Earth, fixing broken machines, losing people he loved, never feeling truly seen. Then he saw her, the moment she smiled at his joke, the moment everything changed. Elira saw her own memories, years of isolation, duty, and the cold perfection demanded by her people. Then she saw him laughing even in danger, bringing warmth into her silent world. The light around them deepened to gold, and a voice spoke. Not the Emperor's, not the priest's, but something older. Do you accept the bond beyond blood, beyond stars, beyond fear? Ethan answered without hesitation. Yes, Elira's voice followed, clear and strong. Yes, I accept. A surge of energy exploded outward, knocking the guards to the floor. The ship trembled as power flowed through every deck. The Emperor shielded his eyes, watching in awe as ancient runes carved into the walls began to glow. The prophecy, one of the elders whispered. The starborn bond has returned. Inside the sphere, Ethan and Elira floated together in light, their hands met, and the energy fused around them like a living sun. Every heartbeat, every thought began to synchronize. Ethan heard her thoughts, felt her fear, her hope, her love. You risked everything for me. Her voice echoed in his mind. You made me believe in something stronger than law, he replied. Their light flared brighter, reaching through the hull and into the sky. But the trial was not done. A dark shadow formed within the light, a test of destruction. The final barrier. A whisper came, cold and cruel. One must surrender, one must fade. Ethan's heart froze. What does that mean? Elira's face grew pale. It means one soul must dissolve to complete the merging. He shook his head. No way, we're doing this together. The shadow surrounded him, draining his strength, his vision blurred, and pain rushed through his body. Elira cried out, trying to reach him, but the energy pulled them apart. The Emperor stepped forward, his voice breaking. Stop this. He will die, the priest shouted. It cannot be stopped. Once begun, it must end. Ethan's voice came weakly through the light. Elira, listen to me, don't fight it. Tears glowed like crystals on her cheeks. No, I won't lose you. He smiled faintly. You won't, not really. With his last strength, he pulled her hand to his chest. You said laughter is weakness, he whispered, but it's what makes us human. And maybe, what will make you whole? The light consumed them both, then burst outward like a star being born. When the brightness faded, the hall was silent. The circle of light had vanished, leaving two figures standing in the center, Ethan and Elira, but changed. Their eyes glowed the same shade of gold. Their heartbeats one. The Emperor stepped forward, stunned. You survived. Ethan looked at Elira, then back at him. We didn't just survive. We became what your people forgot, unity. The Emperor dropped his staff, falling to one knee. The prophecy spoke of balance between stars and soil. You have done what no ruler could, Elira smiled softly, her voice steady but gentle. Father, the age of walls is over. Humans and Viren will build together. Outside, the battle-scarred fleet began to glow as the bond's energy spread, healing damaged ships, reviving systems thought lost across the galaxy. Sensors registered a wave of harmony, the starborn pulse, a living connection between two species once divided. Ethan turned to Elira, his tone light but filled with emotion. So, Your Highness, does this mean I passed the test? She laughed quietly, the sound echoing through the chamber. You passed, human, and now you're stuck with me forever. He grinned. Best mistake I ever made. The Emperor looked at them both, his expression softening. Perhaps love is not weakness after all, he said quietly. As the Vern fleet turned toward the dawn, the stars seemed brighter, and among them, one shone more than the rest, a golden light marking the birth of a new alliance. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of any empire, the universe itself whispered in its eternal voice. Humanity, the species that turns destiny into legend.